خوش آمد میگیم با هم دیگه.
Thank you so much for letting me be with you this morning. I first want to thank Mrs. Kadem for her music. My soul was touched, and it was just beautiful, and in the memory of these amazing women, and I just wanted to thank you so much for that. You had mentioned you didn't read music or play the piano officially. I'm a horrible musician. I have no musical talent at all. And my 6-year-old is taking piano, and in an effort to try to help her, I'm taking piano with her. And so I have great appreciation for how beautiful that was compared to what we sound like. I also want to thank Dr. Mohammed Hosseini for his wonderful presentation. I learned a lot about Tahirih, things I did not know, and I really appreciated his commitment to learning about her life, particularly from primary sources. It's a great service to the world. Thank you. The Tahirih Justice Center is named after Tahirih. We are named in her honor for several reasons. We're named in her honor first and foremost because more people need to know who she is. Tahirih is a very important figure in human history, not just Persian history. And it's critically important that the whole world, particularly the West, have a deep appreciation and respect for who she was and how her trumpet blast changed the atoms of the earth and brought forth the beginning of a new spiritual age for women. It was mentioned in the previous presentation that Tahirih publicly removed her veil. And she did this in 1848 at the Conference of Badasht. That conference, the topic of it was to discuss how quickly things should change. It was a theological debate at the time among the Babis, and they were debating, not unlike many other religions in the past have debated their identity and how different they are from the religion in which their country had, the Jews and the Christians and others. And at this conference of Badasht, they were arguing whether or not they should cut swiftly and noticeably and quickly from Islam, or it should be more gradual. And Tahirih's appeal was that it be aggressive and it be clear. And when she removed her veil, she did this, and the result of her actions and her very powerful speech following that action changed the minds and the hearts of those who were there. And as a result, the Baha'i faith very clearly and unequivocally embraces the equality of women and men. And things changed quickly, and a new day had dawned for women. What is fascinating, I think, is within the same 2-week period of time that the Conference of Badasht took place, there was a conference taking place in Seneca Falls, New York. It was the birth of the women's rights movement. And many Westerners know about Seneca Falls, but what they don't know is that virtually at the exact same time in human history, in the East as well as in the West, there were these great symbolic pronouncements that things would change for women. And so people need to know who Tahirih is. Also, we're named the Tahirih Justice Center because we are a Baha'i-inspired organization. We do our work inspired by principles in the Baha'i faith, and we seek, as best as we can, to apply Baha'i principles in our daily life, how we govern ourselves, how we run our programs, as well as the spiritual and philosophical influence for our work, particularly with regard to the equality of women and men. The Tahirih Justice Center, while being Baha'i-inspired, is not directly governed by nor funded by the Baha'i faith. We are instead supported by people of all faiths who help us do our work. We serve women without regard to religion, and our work is done purely in the spirit of service. but we derive our inspiration from the Baha'i faith. Finally, we're named the Tahirih Justice Center because our job is to support Tahirehs. That's what we do. Women come to our doors who are mini Tahirehs. They are women who are deciding to stand up for themselves, for their daughters, for their children, for their sisters, and to say no to violence. Our clients are women and girls who are fleeing things like female genital cutting, forced marriage, domestic violence, human trafficking, and other forms of violence. And some of these forms of violence they have suffered greatly under. Their mother before them suffered. Their mother's mother suffered, and it has been hundreds, sometimes thousands of years of subjugation, but they've decided to stop and to end it and to demand justice and to live a life free of violence and to promote the equality of women and men. And all of the Tahirih Justice Center's clients are in fact Tahirehs who are standing up for equality of women and men. The Tahirih Justice Center got started over 15 years ago as the result of my involvement as a law student in what became a high-profile case. And the case had to do with a fundamental legal question, which was whether or not you could receive refugee status because of a form of persecution that was happening simply because you were a woman. So these forms of violence that I mentioned to you are inflicted simply because women are women in particular cultures. And our definition of a refugee in the United States, which is modeled after the Geneva Convention, is that in order to prove that you're a refugee, you have to prove that your persecution is because of one of 5 things. You have to prove your persecution is because of your religion, your race, your nationality, your political opinion, or your membership in a social group. That's the legal definition of a refugee. If you cannot prove that your persecution is because of one of these 5 things, you cannot receive refugee status. And so you see the law had a problem with the forms of persecution women face. A young woman who would have been subjected to female circumcision or cutting or mutilation was not being subjected to it because it was in retaliation for her religion. It wasn't because of her race, it wasn't because of her nationality, it was because she simply happened to be a girl in a particular ethnic community at a particular time in history. And at that point, the law did not recognize protection on that basis. And so when I was in law school, I had the blessing of being able to represent a young woman who was fleeing her native homeland of Togo. She was 17 years old, and she had been protected from the cultural practice of female genital cutting from her father, who was a relatively progressive man who saw in her, not unlike Tahireh, great intellectual potential. Fawzia had memorized much of the Quran by the time she was 13. Tahireh had as well, had memorized, in fact, the whole Quran. Fawzia had won a competition that would send her to Saudi Arabia because her Arabic was so good. And her father didn't understand the ritual, he didn't agree with it, and he protected her and sent her to boarding school in Ghana so she could finish her education and go beyond 4th grade, which was customary for the girls in her village. But her father suddenly passed away. He died as a result of an asthma attack, and when he died, her world changed. She no longer had the protection from the ritual that she had enjoyed before. His family then swooped in, and they inherited all of his assets, which included his minor unmarried children. And so Fawzia, at the age of 17, was taken from school, was arranged to marry a 45-year-old man as his 4th wife, and as a condition of the union was to undergo the mutilation that she had avoided up until that point. Fauzia's older sister, who under her father's protection had married a man outside of the tribe who didn't require the circumcision, came after the wedding ceremony but before the mutilation ceremony, under the guise of wanting to congratulate her on her wedding. Fauzia's sister then told her to get in the car. Fauzia did that. She then proceeded to drive her for several hours across the border into Accra, Ghana, which was the nearest capital city, and put her on the first and only plane leaving that night, which happened to be going to Germany. And so Fauzia, like many refugees, did not have time to pack her bags or apply for a visitor's visa. And so she had only what was on her. She was wearing a very beautiful African dress from her wedding. She had some gold jewelry that were gifts. She had a beautiful headdress. Her hands and her feet were dyed in a decorative henna. She was wearing sandals, and she was now in Germany in the middle of December. Fauzia made her way to the Newark International Airport in the United States, because that is where she had family, she had relatives, and she watched CNN. She had seen American movies, and she believed she could come to our shore, simply explain what was happening, call her cousin at the airport, and get protection. As many of us know, that is not how our system works. Instead, she was honest. She passed her passport to the immigration officer and said, "This is not mine. I had to purchase it on the black market. But I am fleeing a forced marriage and female genital mutilation, which killed my aunt and has killed 2 of my cousins." The immigration officer told her that her reason for coming here was not a basis for protection, and that she could either get back on the plane she came on or she could go to prison. She chose to go to prison. And so Fauzia, at the age of 17, then spent almost 2 years in prison with American convicted felons. I met her because in law school I wrote an academic paper arguing in a law journal that you should be able to receive asylum or refugee status because of female genital mutilation. It was an entirely hypothetical argument at the time, but it was meant for someone like Fauzia. Then I worked in the law office of an attorney who had been hired by her cousin, and he handed me her case. He said, "So it looks from your resume like you know something about this female genital thing. Can you handle this case? We have a hearing in 14 days. And what that meant was we had 4 days to prepare any brief or evidentiary materials. But as God had orchestrated things, I had already a 60-page brief and 100 pages of exhibits and evidentiary materials because of a year's worth of research on the topic. And I kind of cut and pasted her name. And that became her brief. I argued her case before the immigration judge, but we lost. I then took the case to American University at the Human Rights Law Clinic, where I was a student. There, an army of law professors and law students worked on the case. And at that point, her case received a lot of media attention. It climbed to the highest immigration appellate court in the United States, and she won. Fauzia's case set legal precedent. And so now it is possible to receive asylum or refugee status because of a form of persecution based on gender. But as a result of her case, 2 things happened. One was that I began being besieged by phone calls from other Fauzias. Lots of women were like her, and lots of women needed help, and there were not organizations. This was a new area of the law to protect them. The other thing that happened was that there was commercial interest in her story and my story of helping her as a law student. And so we sold the rights and wrote a book that was published by Bantam Doubleday Dell, now Random House Press, and it was translated into 11 languages. I used my portion of the proceeds of the book to start the Tahirih Justice Center. And there is so much that we have to do I was 23 when I started Tahirih. Unfortunately, I had some wise mentors who reminded me that I didn't know what I was doing. And so I stayed out of Tahirih's day-to-day running for the first 5 years. I worked at the Justice Department, then I worked for a large corporate law firm, and I tried to figure out and learn how to be a lawyer. And then about 10 years ago, I joined Tahirih full-time, and we have tried our best to respond to the overwhelming need for assistance. For every 10 phone calls we get for women who need help, we can only help one with the resources that we have. And we have 45 staff in 3 different cities, in Houston, Texas, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore, Maryland. At any given time, we're litigating around 700 cases. But there is so much more that we have to do. I want to pause now and invite you to look at the screens to see a video that summarizes our work.
در نیجریه مرد میبایست که زن رو مطیع و رام خودش بکنه. زن رو مطیع میکنه تا اون دست روی کسی بلند نکنه و کاری نکنه.
خانواده شوهرم فکر میکردن شرم آوره اگر من طلاق بگیرم، چون اونها به من مثل ملک خودشون نگاه میکنند. پدر و مادر شوهرم منتظرن که من برگردم پاکستان تا منو به قتل برسونند و بچه هامو از من بگیرند.
یکی از دخترعموهای من فقط 15 سالش بود. پدرش میخواست اونو به عقد یه مرد 70 ساله در بیاره. دخترعموم گفت نه، من حاضر نیستم که این کارو بکنم. بعد به یه نفر گفته بود که میخواد از خونه فرار کنه. من نمیدونم کی اونو کشت، اما همه میگن عموم کشتتش.
یکی از پیشوایان روحانی بی نهایت برای من نگران بود، چون فکر میکرد که شوهرم قصد داره من رو به قتل برسونه. من مجبور شدم از ایالت لوگاس به ایالت دیگه برم برای اینکه خودم رو پنهان کنم، چون شوهرم گفت تو رو میکشم و با عواقبش هم روبرو میشم. البته اگر اون من رو به قتل میرسون، در نیجریه هیچ کس باهاش کاری نداشت. حرف افسر پلیس رو هم هیچ وقت فراموش نمیکنم. بهم گفت زن برو به شوهرت احترام بذار. فکر میکردم که دیگه زندگیم به آخر رسیده. الان هم آدمایی رو میشناسم که دارن همون سختیایی رو تجربه میکنن که من کردم و میخوام اونا بدونن که راه نجاتی هست.
هدف مرکز عدالت طاهره تامین عدالت و اعاده کرامت انسانی به زندگی زنان و دختران شجاعی که خواستار رهایی از خشونت هستند.
و حالا سیستمی وجود داره که از این زنان میخواد چیزهایی را ثابت کنن که اونها برای مدت‌های طولانی سعی میکردن پنهان کنن.
و اگر در راه رسیدن به حفظ و ایمنی موکلینم مانعی وجود داشته باشه، این وظیفه من هست که بر وسیله‌ای که شده راهی رو پیدا کنم تا اون مانع رو از سر راه بردارم. یک ائتلاف گسترده ملی ایجاد کنم تا مطمئن بشم که اون تغییری که نیاز هست انجام میشه.
ما تونستیم پرونده‌های موکلین زیادی را قبول کنیم که سازمان‌های دیگه از جمله وکلای مهاجرت و سازمان‌های غیر انتفاعی حاضر به قبول اونها نبودن.
خدماتی که ما برای موکلینمون تامین میکنیم بسیار جامع است، از جمله خدمات اجتماعی، پزشکی، روانی و مسکن، تا اونها بتونن زندگیشون رو دوباره بسازند و اون گونه که میخوان زندگی کنن.
اونا برام غذا تهیه کردن، یه جایی پیدا کردن که زندگی کنم، لباس برام تهیه کردن. خیلی حس خوبی داشت. من الان برای ارتش آمریکا کار میکنم به عنوان مترجم و معلم زبان. برای رفتن به عراق و افغانستان بهشون آموزش میدم. من عاشق اینم که به مردم کمک کنم، چون یه کسی تو زندگیم به من کمک کرد. حالا من میخوام همین کارو برای دیگران بکنم. این تصمیمیه که من گرفتم.
ما به انواع کمک‌ها نیاز داریم، از جمله کمک‌های داوطلبانه، ولی بیشتر از هر چیز به پول احتیاج داریم تا بتونیم جان این زنان رو نجات بدیم.
مرکز عدالت طاهره جان من و 3 دختر دیگر رو نجات داد. از زندگی در این کره خاکی چه معنایی داره اگر ما نتونیم تاثیر خوبی در زندگی دیگران بذاریم؟
I want also to thank those who translated this video for us. They did a wonderful job. Thank you very much. So you see that our clients are Tahirihs. They are incredibly courageous women and girls who have decided to end the cycle of violence, the culture of violence, and the experience of inequality now. And it takes incredible courage to do what they do. By the time they get to our doors, they are heroes. By the time they get to our doors, they have already left. They have maybe been ostracized from their families. They have been cut off completely economically. They may have given up their degrees. They have given up any assets they had, and they have fled. Their experience is the experience of many refugees and others who inspire all of us. And many of us are here today because of the courage of people like the Tahirih Justice Center clients who are demanding a new way of life. And it is our honor to simply support their courage. That's our job. We do that through free legal services. We are lawyers at our core, but we recognize also that we don't have the resources to represent all the women who come to us. So we partner with over 1,200 pro bono attorneys at 212 large law firms who donate their services to us, last year resulting in $10.1 million in donated legal services to Tahirih Justice Center clients. What that means is that every dollar donated to us is turned into $4 of impact. That's the multiplier effect of leveraging the volunteers. We have a 99% success rate in the cases that we litigate. And we help them not only with legal defense, but we recognize that finding justice is only partly found in the courtroom. We also have social workers on staff who help them with their psychological needs, their medical needs, emergency housing, English as a second language training, and these other things to help them really rebuild their lives and truly find justice. There are more details of our work. There are brochures in the bookstore if anyone is interested. We take interns, we have Baha'i Service Fellows, and there are many ways to get involved. But the work that the Tahirih Justice Center does is not simply an issue of women's rights. It's not simply about promoting justice. For the Tahirih Justice Center, our work is a spiritual imperative. It is a spiritual command that we understand we have for this day and age. We know that humanity is not able to progress any further than it has now without achieving the full equality of women and men. In the Baha'i writings, we have a beautiful analogy, which is that society is like a bird with two wings. One is that of the male, and the other is that of the female. And until both of these wings are equally strong, the bird of civilization will be unable to soar to its fullest potential. And in this analogy, you can see many things. The left wing of a bird, I wouldn't encourage you, but if any of you have tried, you actually can't detach it and stick it on the right side. Nor can you stick the right side of a bird on the left side. They're different wings. They're unique. But they must be coordinated perfectly, and they must be equally strong in order for the bird to fly. And also in this analogy, we understand this is not simply a women's issue. This is a man's issue just as much. Men and women are equally handicapped. We are flopping on the ground together because we are unable to fly and reach our full potential. And so this issue of achieving the equality of women and men is a spiritual imperative for us. Humanity will continue to be handicapped, and we will be unable to soar to our fullest potential until we get it right. It's also important because we have a very big problem. By the time I finish this sentence, an underage girl will be forced to marry against her will. By the time I finish my remarks, 6 girls will endure female genital mutilation. By the time we end this session together, nearly 30 women or girls will report to police that they have been raped. By the time you go to bed at night, 14 women and girls will be murdered because they're considered a dishonor to their family. And by this time next year, 600 to 800 people, mostly women and girls, will be forced into modern-day slavery. We're told in the Baha'i writings that every age hath its own problem and every soul its particular aspiration. The remedy the world needeth at this present day, in this present day, afflictions can never be the same as that which a subsequent age may require. Be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age ye live in, and center your deliberations on its exigencies and requirements. This is our charge, this is our challenge, and this is my obsession. I want to close by telling you the story of an amazing client that I had the opportunity to meet recently. I met her in our Houston office. She had come to meet with some funders. It was funders actually from the Hearst Foundation. And Phoebe Hearst, as we learned earlier, was a Baha'i. And in a very interesting twist of fate, it had to have been God's will. We had an intern who, with very little guidance, unfortunately, and a little bit on her own, submit a letter for funding. She was trying to fund a position for herself, to the Hearst Foundation. They don't fund what we do. If you look at their website, they have nothing to do with our issues. But I got a phone call from the program officer who said to me, you know, we can't fund you, but I'm just interested to know, why are you named the Tahirih Justice Center? And I said, well, طاهره was a Baha'i and we're named in her honor. And she said, you're a Baha'i? I'm a Jew. We love Baha'is. And I said, really? That's great. And it turns out Phoebe Hearst was a Baha'i. She said, oh, I didn't know that. That'll be great. And then we got $50,000 from them. And so you never know how these things happen. But now, 8 years later, and some $1 million later, the Hearst Foundation still supports us. And they had come to our Houston office because they wanted to see how that office was doing. This client came to share her story, and she was just an amazingly inspiring young woman. She was just out of her teenage years when her father was put in prison in Ethiopia for his political activities. And she was at great risk. Her brother was arrested and killed. Her mother had disappeared, and it was clear that she was next. Her father arranged for someone to smuggle her out of the country. But he unknowingly had sold her into slavery. This smuggler, who was paid to help her, sold her to a Saudi family. And then she was forced to live in Saudi Arabia for 6 years, where she did not receive a dime for her services, where she worked 18 to 20-hour days and was whipped if she didn't perform her duties as she was told. The grandmother of the household got cancer, and they came to the Houston University Medical Center to receive treatment. Our client came as a servant with the family to Houston. One day, she figured out that the alarm in the house was turned off for 10 minutes at a certain time during the day. And she received a particularly brutal beating the night before and decided this was enough. She fled the house that day and walked the streets. She found an empty church and simply went in and prayed. She stayed there, she said, for 3 hours, just praying for guidance. She spoke no English. She emerged, and as she continued to walk down the street, she ran into a man, and he was speaking her language. And she grabbed him and explained what was happening. His first response was, I can't help you. But then he saw her desperation. And he agreed and found someone for her to live with. They had then heard of the Tahirih Justice Center, and they referred her to us. We were then able to get her legal protection. We worked with the Houston police to help prosecute the family, who fled but is now not allowed to re-enter the United States. And in helping her, she rebuilt her life both through medical care, through psychological counseling, and legal protection. When she told her story to the funders at this meeting, at one point she cried. And she said, "I have to thank for who I am today, God and Tahirih." And I said to her, because I think for many of our clients, they don't appreciate that really who she has to thank is her courage and herself. Because it is only when a woman decides to say no, when she decides to stand up, and when she gives the opportunity to be of service to her, to someone else, that we are able to change the world. And so she is a Tahirih. Many of you here are Tahirihs. And thank you for spending this morning reflecting on an amazing heroine who has inspired thousands and thousands of other women. Thank you.